Everyone. Tonight, I would like to talk about human sexuality because isn't it great? So, first off, I just want to give you a couple quotes. Sex is the mathematical urge suppressed. I don't know what it means. Sex is as important as eating or drinking, and we ought to allow the one appetite to be satisfied with as little restraint or false modesty as the other. We'll get a little bit more to the Marquis de Sade later. Some things are better than sex, and some are worse, but there's nothing exactly like it. W.C. Fields, and in order for him to say that, you got to think somebody had sex with that. Sex with love is the greatest thing in life. But sex without love, that's not so bad either. That's just being blessed. And this was my personal favorite, Richard Feynman. Physics is like sex. Sure, it might give some practical results, but that's not why we do it. And an obligatory Bible reference here, King Solomon is quoted as saying in the Song of Solomon, "My beloved put his hand by the hole of my door, and my bowels were moved for him." And it's a sexual, the whole book it's about him and his many sexual escapades. I didn't get that one, but I like the imagery, I guess. So, sex. Isn't sex great? Without sex, you and I wouldn't be here. Sure, we can envision a world where people no longer copulate exactly as we see today. And, biological technology is definitely, it's helped many people who, for whatever reasons, can't procreate exactly. But sex on the cellular level, thinking of a world without that kind of sex where, where basically technology is making human life is at this point completely unfathomable to science. So, and really, if we didn't have the sex act, life would be very unflavorful. So, I just want to point out one thing. These are some bonobo apes. They are both male, and they are sodomizing one another, and this is the only dirty picture that you're getting. So if you just came for the pictures, this is the end of it. But recreational sex is something that spans well beyond humans. I mean, humans are definitely known for having sex for fun, not just for procreation, but there are many examples in the animal world of this as well. And, oops. Well, we can leave him up here because we're going to talk about him in a second, but this was my quote. Let's be honest. Sex is beautiful, and it is disgusting. Sex is a squishy, screamy roller coaster. In many ways, human sex is like the human phenomenon itself. So, I'd like to talk to you about some heroes of human sexuality. King Solomon, son of King David, is said in 1 Kings 11:3 to have had 700 wives and 300 concubines. It's an awful lot of women. And interesting to note that if you read through the Song of Solomon, you hear such quotes as, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. My beloved is mine, and I am his," etc. Definitely getting the idea that he might have been a both-way swinger too. Genghis Khan, according to National Geographic, an international group of geneticists studying Y chromosomes data have found that nearly 8% of men living in the region of the former Mongol Empire carry Y chromosomes that are identical. That translates to 0.5% of the male population in the world, or roughly 16 million descendants living today. This guy was a prolific breeder. Part of the campaign of the Mongols to attempt to take over the world was that he impregnated everything that he could. That is his idea. He wanted to have as many offspring as possible. And as a notable mention, his grandson Kublai Khan is said to have 22 legitimate sons and would take in 30 new virgins into his harem each week. The Marquis de Sade, definitely a hero of human sexuality because of what he endured. And if you don't know a whole lot about the life of the Marquis de Sade and only know that his name is linked with sadism and that so his image has been tainted by his very forthright depiction of violence, incest, pedophilia, coprophagia, etc. in his works, you might think this guy's a little sketchy. And he might have been, but he did like to buy whores and beat them. And most of the women liked it. There was one instance where, which was actually the first major scandal in his life, where he bought a prostitute, brought her up into his, castle or whatever, beat her, and she was appalled, and then she ran out and she told everybody. She was like, "Oh, this guy, you don't imagine the things he did to me." But really, as an individual, he was, as the way that he lived his life, and he did live most of his life married to the same woman, he was actually a very peaceful and gentle man. And he suffered torture, and just ridicule. His whole life was taken from him. He was thrown into prisons, insane asylums. And this was during the time of Napoleon and the French Revolution and all this. His lifespan covered some of those years there. And if it weren't for someone like the Marquis de Sade being as outspoken as he was, saying, I am serving myself, I am serving my pleasures, and I seek pleasure, I seek fulfillment, and my desires make me who I am, I wouldn't probably be standing in front of you being able to give a speech like this. It would be, it would be hush hush, it wouldn't be here. And lastly, one of my favorites, and probably the least known of everyone on this list, is a gentleman named Aleister Crowley. If you don't know anything about him also, he was an occultist, a prolific writer, was born in 1875 to a very religious family in England. And at 4 or 5, the accounts differ, even in his own diaries and so forth. He had heard a sermon, basically, where a preacher had said, masturbation is the most evil thing, and made a reference to rubbing. At 4 or 5, he wasn't even able, because he had such little, training or whatever, what have you, from his parents, he wasn't able to equate the organ with the act, and he just sat around basically for the next couple months, like rubbing everything, trying to make something happen. At 4, So he definitely he was looking for it. He was searching, and it showed forth in his life because he wound up founding many different systems of sex magic and ritual sexual systems, basically, where he said that the male and the female union is the completion of the human body. He always described sex as a union act, that sodomy was in some ways a defilement of that sex act because there was no procreation, but still achieving that orgasm. And he described masturbation as union with the divine, within oneself. He said his famous quote was, "In the orgasm, the ego is blotted out." So in conclusion, I hope I've stirred something in everyone tonight. And I hope that at least one of you here is, inspired to go home and thank your parents for having sex so that you could be here. Ask them about it. Get some details. And maybe one or more of you are fortunate enough that by the time that we see each other for our last gathering next week, we'll have had sex. A lot. I'll try my very hardest, just in case nobody else can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Very good.
It's on video. We can put it up on YouTube.
Are you going to put on YouTube?
Yeah, I've got my other ones on YouTube.
I'll take that in.
How hard is this speech? No pun intended.
I have a couple evaluations for Daniel. I think it'd be good for him to get some feedback on that.
I think the subject matter is always there.
Feedback is going to be a little tough to come by on this one.
Oh, can't you twist it for a second?
That's what I said about.
Press your power. I thought you said the middle button in the bottom.
Yeah,
Should reference, what was the